Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing all right out there, and more importantly, staying safe. A lot of active weather as of right now. You got a few tornado warnings ongoing in areas of Mississippi and Louisiana. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Very active weather will continue. It's just going to be an active day, kind of like yesterday. We're going to have severe weather, which trended up yesterday for today. We're going to have the beginning stages of an ice storm in areas of the mid-Atlantic, and then the beginning stages of obviously our winter storm for areas of the Northeast. And then we're going to talk about the upper Midwest, which could see a lot of snow starting this morning into tomorrow. Well, into today, into the overnight hours, and then into tomorrow. And then we're going to give you an update on this big time pattern change, which model guidance did nothing but double down on this happening. And some good news for the eastern U.S., really some incredible model trends over the last, I would say, 18 hours. But again, it's hard to call 18 hours trends. You really need to get a couple days. I've always been a big believer in that. But there's a lot to discuss, and there's a lot of active weather ongoing right now as I speak. So definitely have a way to go to alerts. It's going to be an active weather day, especially as far as severe weather. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. It helps get these videos out there. Appreciate the amazing support over the last several days. You guys mean the world to me, and I really appreciate you giving me this platform to talk about what I love, which is the weather. It means a lot, and I'm always going to show my appreciation for you guys. If you guys got anything I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below. It gives me an opportunity to pray over it, and it gives others an opportunity to do so too. So let's get rolling here. This system, it has that classic look, surface low right over the middle or areas of the northern plains right here. You got a lot of moisture over here, a lot of moisture on the cold side, and a lot of moisture to the south. There's going to be a flooding risk too. But severe weather ongoing right now. The surface low has kind of quit moving east, if you will. Therefore, the kind of movement of these storms are training over the same areas. And until we get some movement or some transfer of this low pressure, you're just going to have a hard time moving the severe weather threat from west to east. And that's kind of what's been going on overnight. Storms have just been kind of refiring over the same areas and areas of southern Louisiana and southern Mississippi, but they will finally get a move on a little bit later today. But it's just been a rocky overnight hours for areas of Mississippi and Louisiana, even into Alabama, and will continue to be the case today. Moisture will continue to spread to the southeast and then the mid-Atlantic into the later evening hours and then the overnight hours, and then ice will become a big concern for areas of the mid-Atlantic. We'll talk about that. And here you go, watches and warnings. You see the purples right here? That is ice storm warnings. We mentioned that was probably going to be the case, and it certainly has been. Still got winter storm watches up for this teal area. We'll get a little bit closer look at this here in a second, but winter weather advisories. Flood watches up for these green counties, and then you got the tornado watches ongoing with multiple tornado warnings right now. We'll talk about that here in a second. But here you go. The enhanced risk is up. Nothing has changed with this, and I mean, everything points to a very rowdy atmosphere that really fuel these thunderstorms in this moist sector, if you will, the sector of high-end ingredients today that will hug the Gulf Coast. And man, it's just going to be a rocky day. We got to get through it. And once we do, we can just really focus in on the cold air, the potential for the winter weather chances. And we can get all this nasty, severe weather out the picture here. But the tornado threat will be high. There's a 10% risk of a tornado within 25 miles of a given location. Multiple reports of tornadoes overnight, yesterday evening. Hopefully, we're waking up to no fatalities. If you guys hear any different, please put it in the comments. But let's hope that is not the case. We can repair structural damage, but of course, we can't repair people's lives. So if anybody's lives are affected out there, we're certainly praying for you folks. But definitely just your classic severe weather event in the fall or wintertime. It's just your classic event. But it's a 10% risk of a tornado today in this yellow area within 25 miles at any given location. And there's also a hatch risk, which is a 10% risk of a significant tornado. That's an EF2 or higher, guys. So this is the same threat as yesterday, but it's moved a little bit east and southeast. So here we go. You know, we look at the HRRR model for the deep south today, includes Mississippi, Alabama, all the states you see on your screen right here. And we get this in motion, and we're moving forward here in time. Notice how the storms just kind of move southwest to northeast. There's not much easterly movement to them. But eventually, as we get into this evening, they will start to really get a move on. But these storms just continue to fire up, and this sector of kind of ingredients, if you will, we call this a warm or moist sector, where dew points are the highest, dew points in the 60s and 70s, Cape values the highest, and you got a little bit of that kinematics mixed in. Even though you don't have much, you still got enough with all these other thermodynamics. You're going to have a tornado threat, and you have the threat right now. And in fact, we look at the radar. This is as of 6:48 Eastern Time, 5:48 Central Time. You got tornado warnings just south of Jackson. You got reports of wind damage right in the middle of Jackson, as it looks like a big wind field moved through the area. But watch out, Georgetown. Listen, I'm telling you, this has that hook to it. That's why there's a tornado warning. You look at the velocity scan from this. And of course, by the time most of you guys watch this, this will be older news. But that looks like a tornado to me, guys, that's going to move just north of Georgetown. And I mean, you look at the correlation coefficient, which really tells us if there's actually damage getting thrown aloft into the atmosphere. And I don't really see much. But man, there is at least at minimum, strong rotation with this. And this is going to be the case all day, guys. We're going to be dealing with this. These storms right here eventually. Zoomed out a little bit too far, but these storms are going to move into these areas a little bit later today. And listen, if you live in this area I just circled, there's going to be a threat for severe weather, a threat for tornadoes. Have a way to get alerts. Download this radar scope. You just got to have a way, guys, that could save your life. We keep this moving in motion, and as we're getting into about midday, all these little storms can be rotating. But you got to watch out these storms right ahead of this main kind of line too. They can have issues, but I can tell you the trend has been the storms along this line that have been dropping tornadoes. So we keep this going into the afternoon hours. We're getting, just before 5 o'clock. This is starting to kind of affect the Birmingham area, Tuscaloosa area. And then the line finally starts picking up some speed from west to east. And then, this starts to move into the Mobile area into the evening hours. The sun begins to set. And hopefully the severe weather threat will begin to kind of chill out a little bit, if you will. But this begins to move into the panhandle of Florida, probably into the late evening, overnight hours. And this turns into just a lot of heavy rain. So we'll continue to watch this. There's a lot of great people on YouTube that keep people alert. And we certainly are praying for the best outcome today. But I can tell you, just based off what's happening this morning, it's just going to be a dangerous day. And I want to hype it up, but I stop it right here. This is around the middle of the afternoon, Central Time. And, southern Mississippi, up to Tuscaloosa, even as far north as Birmingham. I think this little sector right here is going to be the worst. We just need to watch out. And, you look at the dew points in this area. These are dew points, not temperatures. Dew points rising to almost 70 into southern areas of Mississippi and then southern areas of Alabama into the afternoon hours. And, when you get all that moisture at the surface, it's just another ingredient for severe weather. So, please be careful. The Cape values in this area, we can only look, I believe, at surface Cape in this area, which isn't always the best thing to look at. But, it reaches over 1,000 joules per kilogram at the surface. Significant tornado parameter. It looks pretty high down here, guys. Values reaching over 5. And, don't focus so much on the number, but just of the area that, supports the highest tornado threat, which is right down here in these areas of Alabama, Mississippi, and Florida. And, not to discount southeast Louisiana, but you guys are really going to be under the gun into the early afternoon hours and the mid-afternoon hours, where you certainly will run the risk of some nasty severe weather. But the rest of the southeast, the storms continue to march eastward. A lot of rain will move into Tennessee, Kentucky. This other low pressure pops off here, which is kind of helping to aid in the forcing in these storms, if you will. It actually helps to push these storms a little bit further east very quickly. And as we get into the evening hours, we get into the overnight hours, these storms start to move into the Atlanta area. But I think the severity level just really won't be there. But tomorrow, there will definitely be a risk of severe weather. And severe storms will be marching through the panhandle of Florida overnight tonight. And then the ice begins up here. We'll talk about that here in a second. And I think a lot of rain will start to move into the Carolinas and Georgia into the overnight hours. But listen, this isn't being talked about a lot, but there could be a flooding risk today from Jackson, Mississippi up to Huntsville, Alabama, and everybody in between. Even Tennessee, a couple inches of rain certainly possible throughout the next 24 hours. A lot of rain could fall in the deep south today, just because the orientation and just the directional flow of these storms favor training over the same areas. So be safe down there in the deep south today. Let's take a look at the radar one last time. And yeah, I mean, tornado warning still ongoing. 3 currently, 1 probably about to expire right in the Jackson area. But the Northeast, ice storm warnings up for all these counties right here, Virginia, West Virginia, and Maryland. I really think Western Maryland is going to be the epicenter of the highest ice. Potentially somebody could get over a half an inch of ice. And then the hills of Pennsylvania, of southern and southwest Pennsylvania, certainly are going to see a lot of ice. But you see, it's going to be hard to, especially if you have trouble seeing colors. But this is more of a purple shade right here. This is more of a teal shade. But the purple shade is winter weather advisories. And then the winter storm watches are up for the teal areas where they're just still unsure of the severity nature of this storm and how much snow is going to fall. But I reckon a lot of these, by the time some of you folks watch this, will be upgraded to winter storm warnings, where I think a lot of these areas could get, a half a foot of snow, maybe 10 inches of snow, just depending on your location. So the ice storm warnings they are serious. That's a big deal today for sure. But if I flip it over here to the latest long-range HRRR model, a new one will come out here in the next hour or two. Here we go. As early as later this evening of today, freezing rain already starting to show up in areas of West Virginia, Maryland. And then as we get into the overnight hours, moisture will overspread this kind of cold dome of air. And, at the surface, temperatures will probably be in the mid to low 30s in some of these areas when the moisture moves in. But, as a wet bulb, which we can go deep into that a little bit later, as METs, dew points are probably, wherever they are at, maybe in the 20s. Temperatures in the mid-30s, dew points will rise. As moisture is in the increase, dew points will rise, temperatures will drop. And wherever they meet, that is, around where the temperature is going to stay. It could drop a couple degrees just depending on if there's a re-ushering of some drier air. That is what the wet bulb temperature is. So that's what happens here. That's why when I keep this in motion, we get into the overnight hours around the middle of the night, right here around midnight, give or take an hour. You start to see more and more pink in the areas that we're showing more and more green, which is rain. And, we stop it right here. This is around daybreak tomorrow. Just a lot of nasty ice. I mean, even down here to Boone, North Carolina, you got ice. And this is going to be a nasty ice storm for about 12 to maybe as much as 18 hours. And this continues to move through. And this starts tonight. So please, make ice storm preparations. What I normally do is when they're calling for ice, I start to kind of trim back dead limbs. I got 2 big oak trees in my backyard, and I trim them back a little bit. Even if there's an ice storm showing up like 6 days out, I just make the preparation just in case, because my area, normally when we get winter weather, we get a lot of freezing rain. So, but we haven't had a bad one in a while, knock on wood. So, but this is definitely going to be a high-end ice event for those areas that have ice storm warnings right into here for a reason. So please just be aware of this. This is going to move in as early as this evening. But the ice storm totals from the National Weather Service, the professionals, maybe up over a half an inch of ice. Guys, that is a lot of ice. When you start to get to a quarter inch of ice, you're really starting to have issues. But when you get to a half an inch of ice, that's when tree limbs really begin to sag, the roads become an issue, and it becomes bad. Some small trees may fall, some weaker trees may fall. But there's a lot of ice everywhere in areas of the eastern slopes of West Virginia, Maryland, and even the ice. There's a little bit of ice showing up, a trace of ice in Washington, D.C. That's why you have a winter weather advisory. You could get a glaze right at the beginning of this, because a lot of times these cold air damming situations, they're a little bit colder than what models try to say they are. So for the rest of the Northeast today, kind of a quiet day, but moisture will be in the increase overnight. But today, for most of the day, pretty quiet. Maybe an isolated shower or flurry gets thrown into southeast Mass or Rhode Island. But here comes the system tomorrow. Shows the duration of the system. We're getting all the way to about midday. You got snow breaking out in Pennsylvania, western New York State. And then this moves into the rest of the state. We'll stop it right here. This is around late evening tomorrow. If you look at the HRRR model, it's not a lot of heavy precipitation. But we'll see what happens. I don't think this is going to be a massive storm by any means. That's why you just got winter storm watches up. They're not confident, I don't think, that this is going to be a high precipitation storm or anything. But it'll help out the ski country up here. and it'll definitely lay some fresh snow. But certain areas will get over a foot of snow. I think it's certainly possible. You look at the latest NAM, and it shows the duration of the entire event. We're getting into midday tomorrow. Here comes the heavy snow, Vermont, New Hampshire. Unless you're in far southeast New Hampshire, this looks like some heavy snow, wet snow for certain areas, especially if you're closer to the rain snow line. You know, the hills, the higher elevations of western Mass here are going to get some heavy wet snow. But if you're in some lower elevations, it might be raining. It could be really tricky in western central Mass here. But I think from Boston to New York City, you know, to Philadelphia, it's just going to be a cold rain. Just not the surface low isn't necessarily a terrible position, but it's still cutting inland, and there's just not enough cold air into the region yet. But, you know, this trended about 4 or 5 days ago to more of an inland storm. It has stuck to its guns since, and that's certainly what it looks like this is going to be. But snow continues all the way until Friday midday, and I really think this will be a pretty substantial snowstorm for areas of the Northeast. We'll talk about more of this tonight, but the blend of all models shows a lot of snow for New York State, the higher country, upstate New York State, Vermont, New Hampshire. But if there's going to be a tight gradient somewhere in southern and southeast New Hampshire. But watch out, western Mass could be tricky. But the valleys of New York State right into here, you could get snow for sure, especially at the beginning or maybe at the end when cold air filters in. But it's going to be a weird, tricky. Some lake effect snow off Erie, certainly possible as the cold air moves through. And then some snow on top of ice in these areas, which could really make a mess. But we'll watch this. We'll give you another update tonight. My folks up here in the upper Midwest, I know I got a few people who tune in. Just a fire hose of moisture gets funneled in right into a lot of. It's snowing really heavily already up here in northern areas of Wisconsin, areas of northern Minnesota. You know, this area right here on the northwest shoreline of Superior, Lake Superior, and northeast areas of Minnesota going to get crushed with over 2 feet of snow in certain areas, which is lake enhancement snow and just like 2 or 3 rounds of heavy snow. But all this moisture begins to move into the area, and then another area of moisture funnels in. Some of this can be quite heavy in northern Wisconsin, the central and UP of Michigan. This moisture begins to move through. And then really as we get into Thursday morning, this could be extremely heavy moisture moving into the UP of Michigan, northern Wisconsin, more moisture being thrown back. You know, this could throw Minneapolis several inches of snow potentially. But it could be just a weird weather system for you folks up here where, you know, you get a couple rounds, it might tamper off a little bit, then another round, and then a bigger round maybe as you're waking up tomorrow morning. But this could be an intense band of snow. Just warning you guys, waking up tomorrow morning, there could be just an intense area of moisture that moves through, and this could be some very heavy snow. I'm watching this little weird feature right here. This is just an incredible looking storm. It really is. Right now, snow, just a few inches in the central and eastern areas of the UP of Michigan and northern Michigan, just a couple inches. But, you know, some snow being thrown back in Minneapolis, you know, maybe a half a foot of snow. But northern areas of Wisconsin, over a foot of snow showing up almost everywhere. But look at this area in northeast areas of Minnesota. You know, you got areas showing 26 inches of snow. A lot of snow can get thrown into that area. But the entire system as a whole, spinning away, just taking its sweet time, this surface low, just pulling up a ton of moisture with this secondary low that gets tossed up here. Just a lot going on. This brings some warmer air for Chicago. So this is just a rain event for Chicago. Unfortunately for you folks in Chicago who do want winter weather around the holidays, but a wild system. It really is, guys. But for the south central U.S., a lot quieter of a day today, unless you live in Louisiana. But these storms get out the picture, and there's just not a lot to talk about for the south central U.S. Just a very, very quiet day, and I reckon you guys are really thankful for this with the crazy weather in and around the Dallas-Fort Worth area especially. But temperatures today, some cold air damming in the Carolinas. This will aid in some icing overnight tonight for those sections I just mentioned in the mid-Atlantic. Fronts coming. Kind of a return flow of moisture and warmer temperatures ahead of it. No real Arctic air today, but cold enough for snow up here, and just a weird day temperature-wise. With cold air coming in, still the system riding through a pool of that warm, moist air from the Gulf will keep you guys in southern Alabama, southern Georgia. Georgia will be a weird state today where southern sections of the state reach almost 80 degrees. but areas of northern state is only in the 40s. South Carolina, very chilly day, 40s, 50s. So here we go. Let's talk about the pattern change. I'm not going to stay on this long and get very detailed on this tonight, but all I can tell you guys is the models did nothing but double down on this. This is the European ensembles from overnight for basically the evening of Christmas Eve, if you will, December 23rd. You can't get much better of a look than that. You got troughing in the east, guys. Colder air is what I'm saying. The positive P&A ridging in the west. Negative EPO ridging up to Alaska. And negative NAO, which allows for a dislodgement. The negative EPO, negative NAO allows for the dislodgement of cold air. The positive P&A right here allows for the cold air to dump into the central and eastern U.S. And then as the trough digs, the storm tracks south. So you got this. It's 10 days out. Just remember, a lot of people are wondering, man, are we going to have a snowstorm or not? Snow, winter weather, this, that, and the other. And I'm excited about that too. But listen, we got to get the cold air here first, especially for us in the South. That is a staple mark, just an age-old saying that's been around forever. In the South, you got to get the cold air first. Don't worry about the wild. If you know how to look at the tropical tidbits and these models, do not worry about the run-to-run changes. Okay, a lot of people are saying it's going to be cold and dry. It's going to be snowy. Do not get it. One thing I used to do when I was younger, even 5 years ago, I used to get emotionally really drawn into every change in every model run. And I let my emotions get in the weather. I'll be honest with you. I think any weather enthusiast has been there at one point. Even some of your biggest meteorologists have probably been there at some point. But as I've gotten older, matured, I realized that the weather doesn't care about my feelings and what I think. So I do get upset sometimes when things trend away, but at the same time, I acknowledge that it's not doing it on purpose. It's funny some of the things I see on social media, like they think that the cold avoids their area deliberately. But just know we got to get the cold air first. And the ensembles, which is the best thing to look at in the long range. Remember, Christmas Eve and Christmas is 10 to 11 days away. We're still far out. The ensembles look great. On the GEFS, the one that literally just dropped, it looks great. Troughing, the same look as the European ensembles, and even the old Canadian ensembles show the same thing at 10 days, guys. This is a great look for cold in the east, and you're just asking for moisture to come out the Gulf of Mexico. It's just begging to do it. So let's get through this. Let's figure it out, and I'll have you guys an update tonight. Stay safe in the South tonight and today, and God bless all y'all.